Megan and her dog, Kane, venture into an abandoned house deep in the woods, drawn by rumors of strange disappearances. But as they explore, they soon realize that something dark and dangerous lurks inside. Will they make it out alive? Or will they become part of the house's twisted history?
The forest was dense, the path increasingly difficult as they ventured farther from the established trails. The towering pines and ancient fir trees formed a natural labyrinth, their massive trunks blocking sightlines beyond 20 yards. "We're heading northwest now," said Marcus, glancing at his GPS. "No trails marked here. This section's old-growth forest. Never been logged." After 30 minutes of steady hiking, Kane, the Belgian Malinois, paused at the base of a steep ridge, his ears perking up as he scented the air. Without warning, he surged ahead with such force that Megan, the handler, almost lost her footing. "Kane, easy," she commanded, regaining control of the lead. The dog stopped at what appeared to be an overgrown path cutting horizontally across the ridge face. "Service road," Marcus said, crouching to examine the compacted earth beneath the vegetation. "An old one. Not on our current maps." They continued along the overgrown road, but Megan's unease grew. The forest seemed to close in around them, the canopy thickening, with only occasional shafts of sunlight breaking through. "This area was logged in the 1920s, Marcus explained, breaking the silence. "Old company records mention a small settlement for workers. Nothing permanent, just temporary structures that were abandoned when operations ceased." Kane led them around a sharp bend in the old road and froze. His entire body stiffened as he stared ahead, intense focus in his eyes. Megan followed his gaze, and her breath caught in her throat. Nestled in a small clearing was a two-story house, its weathered clapboard exterior stained dark with age and moisture. Unlike the dilapidated ruin one might expect after a century of abandonment, the structure appeared largely intact, sagging in places, windows blank and dark, but fundamentally sound. "That's no logging camp shack," Megan whispered. "No," Marcus agreed, his hand instinctively moving to rest on his sidearm. "That's someone's homestead, and it shouldn't be here." The house loomed before them, its weathered exterior bearing the scars of countless seasons. Up close, Megan noticed details that had been obscured from a distance: elaborate Victorian-style trim around the eaves, much of it rotted away, and remnants of what must once have been an elegant wraparound porch now partially collapsed at one corner. "Sheriff's Department," Megan called out. "We're conducting a search for a missing hiker. Anyone inside, please identify yourself." Silence answered. Even the sounds of the forest seemed muted, creating an unnatural stillness that sent a chill down Megan's spine. "I'm seeing recent footprints," Marcus noted, pointing to distinct impressions in the soft earth near the porch steps. "Multiple sets, some going, some coming." Megan knelt to examine one clear print. "This matches the tread pattern from Jason's hiking boots." Based on his girlfriend's description, he was definitely here. Following protocol for approaching potentially occupied structures during search operations, Marcus drew his service weapon, keeping it pointed safely downward. "Sheriff's Department," he called again. "We're coming in to search the premises." The front door creaked ominously as Marcus pushed it open. The interior was dim, with little daylight filtering through the cloudy, intact windows. The foyer revealed peeling wallpaper and a dust-covered wooden floor. Surprisingly, the furniture remained, though tarnished. A crooked mirror hung on one wall, and what had once been an elegant side table stood beneath it, its surface littered with debris. The air inside was cold and dank, carrying the musty scent of long abandonment, mixed with something less identifiable, something sharper, more recent. Kane moved cautiously into the foyer, his nose working constantly, his head turning to process each room branching off the central space. Contrary to his usual search pattern, he stayed unusually close to Megan's side. "Living room's clear," Marcus announced, checking the first doorway to their right. The adjoining dining room and kitchen showed signs of abandonment, but nothing immediately concerning. Just decades of dust, fallen plaster, and small debris left by forest creatures seeking shelter. "Someone's been here," Megan observed, pointing to relatively clean areas on the kitchen table where dust had been recently disturbed. There was also an empty modern water bottle in one corner.
It was when they reached a door beneath the main staircase that Kane's behavior changed dramatically. The Malinois stopped abruptly, his body stiffening as he stared at the closed door. A low growl rumbled in his throat. "Basement access," Marcus said quietly. Megan noticed something she had missed in their initial sweep. Small symbols carved into the doorframe. Abstract patterns that appeared deliberate rather than random vandalism. Similar markings adorned the floor at the threshold. Faint lines scratched into the weathered wood. "These are recent," Megan said, crouching to examine them. "And they're all around the door. Almost like a boundary," Marcus finished. Kane's growl deepened, his attention unwaveringly fixed on the basement door. In 3 years of search operations, Megan had never seen Kane display such focused apprehension. Megan remembered how Kane had stayed by her side during one of her lowest points, when a failed search for a missing child had shattered her confidence. It was Kane who had guided her back to safety that night, and it was Kane's instincts she trusted now. "I'm going to trust my partner," Megan said to Marcus, placing her hand reassuringly on Kane's back. "If he thinks there's something important down there, we need to find out what it is." The basement door resisted at first, but with a groan of protesting hinges, it gave way. Stale air rushed upward, carrying the distinct mineral scent of underground spaces, mingled with something sharper, almost metallic, that made Megan wrinkle her nose. "Temperature drop," Marcus noted. "Feels like 15 degrees cooler down there." A narrow wooden staircase descended into darkness. Megan activated her tactical flashlight, the beam cutting through the gloom, revealing a dirt floor approximately 8 feet below. Kane maintained his alert posture, but showed no inclination to lead the way down, unusual for a dog normally eager to forge ahead. The basement was larger than Megan expected, extending beneath the entire footprint of the house. Stone foundation walls supported the structure above, while hand-hewn wooden pillars provided additional reinforcement at regular intervals. Unlike the relatively untouched upper floor, the basement showed signs of more recent activity. Someone had been using this space.
"Someone's been here," Megan observed, directing her light toward a modern camping lantern sitting atop an old wooden crate. Nearby, a sleeping bag was neatly rolled next to a small backpack. "Surge team, this is Marcus," Marcus called into his radio. "We've located possible belongings of the missing hiker in an abandoned structure. Request additional units at our GPS coordinates." Static answered him. They methodically documented the scene, photographing the items with their phones. The backpack contained energy bars, a first aid kit, and a dog-eared trail map of Blackwater Ridge with handwritten annotations. A notebook nearby held cryptic entries. The final one dated the day Jason had disappeared. Going back inside today, the final entry read, "If legends about this place are true, I'll have proof nobody can dispute." Kane, who had been investigating the perimeter of the room, suddenly stiffened again. His attention locked on the far wall. Megan recognized his body language immediately, the same alert posture he displayed when detecting hidden items during evidence searches. She moved toward the wall, her flashlight beam revealing subtle differences in the mortar pattern halfway along its length. Together, they examined the wall section carefully and discovered a cleverly disguised mechanism. A protruding stone, when pressed inward, released a catch with a low scraping sound. A section of the wall approximately 3 feet wide pivoted inward, revealing a narrow passage beyond. The passage opened into a circular chamber about 15 feet across, floored with fitted stone slabs. The walls bore faded markings, unfamiliar text and intricate geometric patterns. In the center stood a stone table resembling an altar, its surface stained dark. Surrounding it in a precise circle were 7 candles, 3 recently lit with soft wax. Most disturbing were the items arranged on the altar: a driver's license, a watch, and a cell phone. Megan recognized them from the missing person report. "Jason's belongings," she confirmed, photographing without disturbing anything. "But where is he?" Kane's agitation grew as he circled the room. He would approach the altar, then back away, caught between his training to investigate and a powerful aversion. Megan's flashlight flickered, then dimmed significantly. A low humming emanated from the walls, building until Megan felt it vibrating in her chest. The temperature plummeted. Their breath became visible in crystalline clouds.
Kane's behavior shifted dramatically. He positioned himself against Megan's legs in a protective stance, his attention fixed on an empty corner. Instead of his typical aggressive barking when confronting threats, he maintained a vigilant silence. "We need to go," Megan said, trusting Kane's assessment. "Now!" As they retreated, Megan's failing light illuminated one final detail, a fresh name carved into the altar's edge below others worn faint with age. Jason Reeves. They emerged from the hidden room, and Marcus immediately tried his radio again, receiving nothing but static. Megan checked her phone. No signal. The battery had drained from 85% to 17% in the brief time they'd spent in the basement. At the base of the staircase, a soft thump from the floor above froze them in place. Then, unmistakable footsteps moved across creaking floorboards. "Someone's up there," Megan whispered, drawing her sidearm. "Could be our missing hiker." The main floor appeared empty as they emerged cautiously from the basement. Daylight had dimmed significantly. Megan glanced at her watch. They'd spent less than 40 minutes inside, yet the quality of light suggested late afternoon. Kane suddenly perked up, his attention drawn to a small secretary desk in the corner they hadn't examined closely before. The desk's roll top had been opened, revealing a stack of leather-bound journals. The top volume lay open, its pages covered in handwritten text, remarkably fresh compared to the aged paper. Megan studied the open page, a chill running through her. These were names and dates of people who'd disappeared in these woods. The journal entries dated back to 1893, continuing with irregular frequency through the decades. Some names had been annotated with additional details: ages, occupations, circumstances of disappearance. Megan recognized several entries from unsolved missing person cases. Most disturbing was the final entry: Jason Reeves, with yesterday's date, followed by a precise time. 3:17 p.m. Kane suddenly growled, spinning to face the doorway. Seconds later, a loud crash came from upstairs, the sound of furniture being overturned or thrown. "Sheriff's Department," Marcus called, moving to the base of the main staircase. "Identify yourself immediately." Only silence answered, followed by another crash, this one directly overhead. Plaster dust filtered down from the ceiling as part of the roof caved inward. The staircase protested under their weight as they ascended slowly, hands on weapons, training clear. The upstairs hallway was dark, lit only by a few stray beams of sunlight breaking through the cracks in the walls. The entire second floor seemed to be in a state of collapse, with portions of the ceiling sagging precariously and debris scattered everywhere. "We need to check the attic space," Megan muttered to Marcus, her eyes scanning the remnants of what was once a well-kept home.
Kane, moving ahead, seemed more alert than ever, his ears flicking at every subtle noise. He was focused on the door at the far end of the hallway, which, despite its disrepair, still stood intact. The dog's low growl suggested something was off. "Stay close," Marcus warned, taking his position at the front of the group. He carefully tested the door's handle, finding it locked. He turned back to Megan, signaling her to keep a safe distance as he applied force to the door. With a sudden creak, the door snapped open, revealing a narrow staircase leading up to the attic. A musty, damp air rushed down the stairs as Marcus entered first, flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. Megan and Kane followed closely, the dog's growl becoming louder and more distinct as they ascended. When they reached the top, the attic space opened up into a large, unfinished room filled with crates, boxes, and cobwebs. Faint moonlight filtered through a small window in the far wall, casting an eerie glow across the room. The air was heavy, as if it had not been disturbed for years. Kane's growl now sounded almost guttural, and he moved toward the far corner, stopping in front of an old trunk. "Check this," Marcus instructed, his voice tense. Megan stepped forward cautiously, watching Kane's movements. The dog's body language was unrelenting, as if he was trying to warn them of something in that exact spot. Megan approached the trunk, kneeling down to examine it. It was a large, heavy chest, the kind one might expect to find in an attic full of forgotten family heirlooms. She opened the trunk slowly, hesitating as she revealed its contents. Inside, there was only one item, a thick, leather-bound journal. The pages of the journal were brittle, yellowed with age, but the writing inside was still clear enough to make out. Megan turned the pages carefully, her heart pounding as she read the cryptic entries. The dates ranged back to the late 1800s, and many of the names mentioned seemed to match those from the earlier entries Megan had seen on the altar downstairs. Then, she froze. There, in the middle of the journal, was an entry that made her blood run cold. "The house claims its own, and those who enter cannot leave." Jason Reeves was the last to discover this truth. Megan's hand trembled as she closed the journal, her eyes flicking to Kane, whose growl had turned into a sharp bark of warning. "Something's not right," she whispered to Marcus. "We need to leave. Now." Marcus nodded, his face pale but determined. He was about to turn when the air shifted. It was a subtle change, like the entire atmosphere around them had thickened. Then, the unmistakable sound of footsteps from below. "Not again," Megan murmured, gripping her weapon tightly. The noise grew louder, unmistakable. Someone, or something, was moving upstairs. Kane barked sharply, his hackles raised as he darted toward the stairs. Without a second thought, Marcus motioned for Megan to move back toward the staircase. They had to act quickly, or they'd be caught in the same trap Jason Reeves had fallen into. But as they turned to leave the attic, something unexpected happened. The trunk slammed shut with a loud bang, as if an invisible force had snapped it closed. The sound echoed through the house, and Megan's heart raced. Marcus took a step back toward the door as the eerie sensation of being watched washed over him. The temperature dropped another 10 degrees, the cold seeping into their bones as they moved down the narrow staircase. Kane was ahead of them, barking sharply again, his body stiff with tension. They reached the main floor just in time to hear more movement from the far side of the building, muffled by the thick walls. "Let's go," Megan commanded, her voice sharp. "We don't know what's in there, but we're not waiting to find out." They made their way back through the house, Kane leading the way with a protective stance, his eyes constantly scanning for danger. As they reached the front door, it suddenly slammed shut with a deafening crash, the force of it sending the hinges rattling. Megan's breath caught in her throat as she reached for the doorknob, but before she could turn it, a cold, distant voice echoed from behind them. "You can't leave." Marcus and Megan spun around, their weapons raised, but there was nothing but the oppressive silence that filled the house. Then, another crash came from behind them. This time, the sound was unmistakable, a heavy object slamming against the walls. Kane's body stiffened, his growls intensifying as he backed away from the door. "We need to get out of here," Megan urged, her pulse quickening as she turned back to the door. She yanked the door open, the hinges protesting, and rushed out into the thickening rain. The moment they crossed the threshold, Kane's growl stopped, and the eerie sensation lifted. But the house still loomed behind them, dark and foreboding, as though it was watching their every move. The house, it was alive in some way. They sprinted toward the tree line, the oppressive atmosphere lifting as they put distance between themselves and the nightmare they had just narrowly escaped. The forest seemed to close in around them, the tall trees now standing as silent witnesses to their escape. Megan didn't dare look back, but she could feel the house's presence, like a cold hand pressing against her back. Every part of her screamed to leave this place behind. After what felt like hours, they finally made it back to the ridge where they had first come upon the old house. Kane, now at ease, was leading the way. He had calmed down, his movements slower now as if he, too, understood the danger had passed. They paused at the top of the ridge to catch their breath, looking down at the house below. It was still there, and though it was silent now, Megan knew, deep down, that the house was far from done with them. It had claimed Jason Reeves, and it was only a matter of time before it would return to claim more. Back at her office the next morning, Megan began the difficult task of sorting through the evidence they had gathered. But one piece stood out above all the rest: the photo of Jason Reeves standing before the house, the one that had been left behind. His expression was vacant, lost. The timestamp on the photo was 3 days after their search. On the back, in looping script, were the words, "The house always returns, so do we." Megan's gaze flicked to Kane, who was sitting beside her, his eyes fixed on the photo. For the first time, she realized, he wasn't just watching the photograph. He was watching the house. Have you ever had an encounter like this with your dog? Have they ever reacted to something you couldn't see? Share your experiences below, and don't forget to hit subscribe for more incredible K9 stories.